I'm very honored to announce my own colleague, or our own colleague, so Natalie Evans. And she's in charge of all the integrity projects, and she's really doing a great job. She was one of the founders of the Embassy of Good Science, is doing research on the experiences with the virtue training, and moreover, she coordinates the PhD course for all Amsterdam UMC PhD candidates. In short, Natalie can do everything, and as we say in the Netherlands, Natalie is a sheep with 5 legs. So, so the floor is yours. Thanks.
So I can do everything, but maybe not everything in 15 minutes. So today I'm going to talk about evaluating the outcomes of research integrity training. I'm going to give a case study, the lessons from a European initiative. This is a slightly smaller scope than what's promised on the program, because we can't fit everything into 15 minutes. So I'm going to introduce the case study, and that is virtue. I'll give an overview of validated outcome measures for research integrity, and I'll talk about aligning learning goals, activities, and evaluation, including outcome evaluation. So first of all, in virtue, what is virtue? For those of you who don't know, virtue is a train the trainer program for teaching research integrity from a virtue ethics perspective. So our trainers are taught how to foster reflection on virtues needed to make a good researcher, and how to promote understanding of the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. It takes an aspirational approach and focuses on what it means to be a good and virtuous researcher. And the core is promotion of reflection on personal values and behaviours. The specific learning objectives for our virtue trainers are to identify and apply the core principles and recommended good practices of the European Code of Conduct, to understand core virtue ethics concepts and terms and relate these to research integrity, to facilitate case-based and experiential exercises aimed at fostering reflection on virtues, to critically reflect on experiences of teaching, and to adapt teaching approaches based on the target group characteristics. I'm only going to talk very briefly about virtue because I want to focus on the evaluation, but just to summarize, virtue is a blended learning program. Our materials consist of online materials, including short series of online e-learning modules, such as the Introduction to Research Integrity, Introduction to Virtue Ethics to Research Integrity, Virtue Ethics under Current Research Conditions, and Introduction to Responsible Supervision, Mentoring, and Role Modeling. Also, our trainers are taught how to facilitate participatory exercises to encourage group reflection on practice. And these are debate and dialogue, the modified Rotterdam dilemma game, self-declaration approach, virtues and norms in the middle position. So all of these participatory exercises utilize cases, hypothetical, but also in 2 of these personal cases of the group. And they all include a step, sometimes small, that encourages reflection on the European Code of Conduct in relation to that particular case. So, rounding up the summary of what virtue is, we've trained 470 trainers across Europe and, in some cases, outside of Europe as well. We asked those trainers in a process evaluation what they thought of the online modules, and they rated these quite highly. We asked them what they thought of the participatory exercises, and they rated these even higher. So yay, virtue is a success. Is virtue a success? Because we don't really know if virtue is doing what we want it to do. We want virtue to be able to improve the practices of researchers. And the learning objectives for our researchers are slightly different to those for our trainers. Without the teaching objectives, we also have that they should engage in case-based and experiential exercises aimed at fostering reflection on virtues, and they should recognize research integrity dilemmas in practice, reflect on personal responsibilities and virtues when resolving dilemmas. So we have the ambition to see if virtue-inspired programs by our trainers can help with the outcomes related to these learning objectives. We're going to conduct a pre- and post-training study. It will be a mixed methods design, including interviews and questionnaires. So when developing the questionnaire for this outcome evaluation, we wanted to look at what are the validated outcome measures for research integrity teaching and responsible conduct of research teaching. Are these applicable for us? Are these things that we are going to use? So it's nice that Katsarov went before me, because to identify the validated outcome measures for research integrity courses, I looked at the studies identified in the review of Katsarov, and the Library of Online Ethics Center, the Library of Bioethics Research Center, and also new studies that we knew of. We wanted to only focus on validated measures, ones that focused on research integrity and not research ethics. Some were validated measures for the responsible conduct of research, often coming from the US. You look at the items, you look at the actual content, and they're talking about, do you know about the IRB and its processes? And that is not really applicable for research integrity course. And we wanted validated measures that were either targeted at or validated amongst PhD researchers and all researchers above PhD researchers. We excluded those that were not specific to the research context. So Katsarov was just talking about moral reasoning, for example. If a measure was a moral reasoning measure that was just general and not to do with the research context, we did not include that. And also, if there was a measure that was only applicable to a very niche group, well, niche is maybe not the right word, a small group of researchers, such as engineers, we didn't include that either. So based on this selection criteria, we found 7 validated measures that have been developed for research integrity and responsible conduct of research teaching. One of those measures was a development of another one of those measures, so we only look at the newest version. So in the slides, you can see the measure, the name of the measure, what it claims to assess, how many items it contains, how the items are scored by the respondents, and I did a qualitative content analysis of the measures, taking the European Code of Conduct as a framework, looking to see what the statements and scenarios that are included in the measures, what their content is about. Does it reflect the European Code of Conduct, for example? So we have the first measure, the How I Think About Research measure. This assesses cognitive distortions of scientists doing research. And these distortions are things like assuming the worst, blaming others, minimizing, mislabeling, and self-centered thinking. It does cover some of the content of the European Code of Conduct, but not a great deal. The professional decision-making in research measure, this looked very hopeful for the virtue training, because it assesses decision-making strategies in relation to challenging research issues. And it covers quite a lot of the European Code of Conduct content. Then we have a number of measures which assess the understanding of research integrity, responsible conduct of research, related concepts, and maybe some justifications for their understanding. This includes the revised responsible conduct of research reasoning test, the path to integrity questionnaire, and the knowledge of responsible conduct of research measure. Now, the path to integrity questionnaire, we have Julia here, so it's nice that she's here, covered the most content from the European Code of Conduct, which is not surprising because that was an explicit aim of the development of the measure. And finally, we have the values in scientific work measure, which assesses attachment to different intrinsic, extrinsic, and social values that motivate the work of scientists. Also very interested in this measure because the virtue training focuses on reflection on personal values and scientific virtues. However, the values that are reflected by the statements of the values in scientific work measure are, and I'll just read them out, autonomy, research ethics, social impact, income, collaboration, innovation growth, job security, conserving relationships. So these don't reflect the principles of the European Code of Conduct. They don't reflect the important scientific virtues for researchers in Europe or in the US as found by Pennock and colleagues, for example, or Tomic and colleagues. So we discarded that as an option. So at the moment, we have professional decision-making in research as a possibly really good one for virtue, and path to integrity questionnaire. The most important learning objectives for the participants of our virtue trainers courses are probably 1 and 4, because these really represent the application of knowledge and skills in practice, and these are the things that we wanted to really target. We thought perhaps the professional decision-making measure could target the 4th objective. However, if you look at the items and the type of scoring, there's not a lot of difference between this, that's supposed to look at decision-making strategies, and the measures that look at understanding knowledge in research integrity. And the developers admit themselves that really they focus on knowledge as the reason why people make better decision-making strategies. Then I think this was the old version, but I wanted to show also one of the path to integrity items. But we're left with path to integrity as our top measure. Good, but we took the measure and the items to the other participants of the participating centres that we want to take part in the outcome evaluation. And they looked at the items and they said, I don't think our participants, considering virtue as a training program, would actually do better on the score, because virtue really focuses on the 4th learning objective, the identification of dilemmas in practice, reflection on professional virtues and values. And the content of virtue really makes people aware of the European Code of Conduct, what is in it, but not the details of how to actually implement those recommendations. So sorry, path to integrity had to go as well. But that's more because of virtue than path to integrity measure, which was the best of the lot. So we were looking for a suitable outcome measurement. We were looking for a validated measure. There were many that we found, but they all were inappropriate because of the lack of validity to the virtue course content. Virtue is a very special course, if I say so myself. It is different to the other research integrity courses. So we decided to focus the outcome evaluation, including the knowledge part, to reflect some questions that were related to the course, so not a validated measure. We are taking it from Abdi and colleagues, a measure that they used in Leuven, or questionnaire that they used in Leuven, so at least we can compare it to another, but they are more applicable for the virtue course. And specifically, we focus on the skill of recognizing, responding to research integrity dilemmas in practice, because I think that's what makes virtue special. So these are the research questions for the virtue outcome evaluation approach. We are going to do interviews and a questionnaire. I won't read them all out. But what will our questionnaire look like if we can't use these validated measures then? We will ask them about the principles, virtues, and values that they find important in their research practice. We'll ask them about knowledge of research integrity practices using some questions that have been used by the Catholic University of Leuven before, not a validated measure. We are going to modify another validated measure, and that is the Euro-MCD questionnaire. So the Euro-MCD questionnaire was developed to look at the effectiveness of moral case deliberation in clinical settings, and it looks at how participants feel about their moral competence, moral teamwork, and moral action. And we think that these items reflect quite closely what we're trying to do in that very important fourth learning objectives for the researchers. I'm going to add some other questions, asking them if they change their responses to the Euro-MCD questionnaire pre and post, why? Because sometimes people may not know they're having dilemmas and then are better at recognizing them. And we'll ask them if they think their awareness, knowledge, skills, and attitudes have been changed by participation in the course. So in conclusion, a validated measure that lacks validity for specific course content is worse than no validated measure at all, in our opinion. It is important to align learning goals, activities, and evaluation, and this includes in the selection of your outcome measure. And some people I've heard in other research integrity conferences saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had the same measure for all courses and then we can compare? I think the diversity of measures with diverse aims, target constructs, and referent content reflects diversity and innovation in research integrity and responsible conduct of research training, and that should be celebrated. So thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you for speed up. That's a good thing, being a native speaker, that you can talk really fast. Yeah, thank you so much. One or maybe two questions, and I hope this can be short. Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah.
Is this on? Yeah. Thank you so much. Could you say a little bit more about the sort of time frame of the evaluation in particular, because, and I couldn't ask it to the previous speaker, we've seen very light differences with regards to when we actually inquired or when we collected participants' views. So a little bit more information on that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much. So the participating centres are ones that have embedded the virtue training. So these trainings are continuing. They're not ones that are in the past. So we wanted to start piloting now in October, but because we wanted it also to be sort of a co-creation between the participating sites of what was included in the questionnaire, we have had sort of an iterative development, and we hope to do the piloting in the coming months. But you mean the pre-test and the post-test, that's what you're asking. When will that be?
And also in relation to when the course happens,
yeah.
Are you going to ask the day after?
Yes. So that's a really good point as well. The pre-test has to be done before they receive any materials, so on registration, because the online modules can be looked at in participants' own time. So we want to, on registration, before they receive the links for them. The post-test, we will ask them immediately after the course to fill in the post-test, because we think that's when they're more likely to do it. And we actually want to have 3 measurement moments. 3 months after the course as well, we'll ask them to fill in the questionnaire again, because virtues take practice. And we hope to have some kind of sample size then, but, students.
Okay. The next question is for Lex Bouter himself.
Well, thank you, Natalie, for this interesting presentation. I have a suggestion and a question about one of your last remarks about your plea for diversity in outcome parameters. I agree and I disagree. The point is, of course, when you want to lump everything together and do systematic reviews, for instance, you need to have some common basis to do that. And this is not unique for research integrity courses evaluation. We see it in clinical medical as well, things as well. And there we have something called a core set of outcome parameters. And then you design together, internationally, what are the 3 or 4 outcomes which we all should measure. And then if you like other ones, you can add them and you can write papers about them. But there is a kind of moral obligation to use the 2 or 3 core outcome parameters. Would that be a way forward for this field as well, is my question.
I think that's a really nice suggestion. Then everybody is happy. It wouldn't work for virtue, though, because what we give people is a toolbox, and they can use the materials as they want to. And if someone was only using the virtue materials and not additional materials such as path to integrity or integrity, then they might not achieve on the actual understanding of practices of responsible conduct of research or research integrity. So it depends. I think you still have to look critically at the learning objectives of a particular course.
I disagree.
Okay. Yeah, also Mariette has a question, but I think she has a chance next week or something. So during the break, I don't know if you will be here during the break because you have to leave to the kick-off meeting in Bonn. So good luck over there, and thank you for your talk.
Thank you.